Good morning, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in here on Substack, on YouTube, on Twitch. I'm Nick Perro, not your dad, joined by my good friend Walter Ryan, protector of Labradors, and our guest co-host Evie Bateman.
Hello.
And today we're doing a special episode here on Sick of This Shit Publications for Notes of the Week. We are joined by our first of two candidates today, Chris Armstrong for Wisconsin CD7. It is good to have you, Chris. Evie, good to have you too. Walter, it's really good to see you today. I'm going to hand it over to Walter real quick before we have Evie and Chris introduce themselves. Walter, I know. Good morning, my friend. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. And I'm so happy to see Evie. We've done a couple of candidate interviews. And I just always, whenever I have a wonderful candidate like Chris on today, I just say thank you for being of the new generation of candidates who talks to regular people. Thank you. That is what we need. This is our government. We need to be represented. We need access. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm looking forward to the talk today.
Likewise.
My name is Evie Bateman. I am a former child care director. I had a career in there in that field, and I decided to leave about 4 years ago because I saw how education kind of took a turn. And now I'm a full-time writer and blogger. I met Walter through Substack, and we've done a couple of lives together, and I am really excited about helping him boost these progressive candidates because this is something that has become unexpectedly really, really important to me over the last few years. So I'm just here to help boost candidates and get their platforms out, and let's change the world one person at a time.
Absolutely.
So today we're joined by one of those candidates, part of the Courage for Democracy candidate group, Chris Armstrong. Can you introduce yourself for everyone and who you are, a little bit about yourself before we get into any questions today? Because Evie, just like you, and this is the first time I'm meeting Evie too, so this is really awesome. Evie, we'll have you back again just for a you episode where we get to talk to you for a while just by yourself, but this is really awesome. I'll have you on for something else too, probably. Chris, please introduce yourself, and then let's get into some questions today for our candidate who's got some courage to step up in this moment right now and run. So first off, thank you, Chris, for both running and for being here.
And thanks, everybody, for having me. So I'm Chris Armstrong. I live in New Richmond, Wisconsin, in St. Croix County in the western part of the 7th District, which, as many may know, is pretty much the northern third of Wisconsin, with a little bit of tail down in the central area, down to the Mauston and Toma area. I am a IT consultant. My career is focused on something called enterprise architecture and model-based systems engineering, and we probably don't have enough time to get into all that.
Oh my God, you and I need to just have a conversation on that because I was a senior DevOps engineer.
Oh, no way.
And systems design architect and did systems and pipeline release design architecture. So you and I should have a separate conversation because that'd be really cool.
We could geek out on that, Nick.
Yeah.
So I own my own IT consulting company. This is my third one. I've been in business for over 20 years, running it out of here in the basement in my house. Customers tend to be Fortune 1000 organizations, as well as federal and state government agencies. I grew up just north of here on the just across the county line in Polk County on the Apple River, as some may know, the inner tubing capital of the world. And went to school in Amory, Wisconsin. Graduated from there in 1982. Went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, found out that there were other things other than scholastic achievement to aspire to. So got a little distracted, had some fun, dropped out, a teenage dirtbag for a while, and then finished my degree at the University of Minnesota in astrophysics with a minor in mathematics.
Perfect.
And so, I got into this race, I was the first candidate back in April 2025, and it actually was started a little bit earlier than that, February 2025, where perhaps like some of you guys and people that are watching, when Trump was inaugurated and the flurry of, unconstitutional legal executive orders came out, and then Elon was again illegally taking a sledgehammer to the federal government. I was, doing my doom scroll and watching TV, but just going, what the heck is going on? Why isn't anybody doing anything? I mean, oh my God. And so I had to do something. And even though it might have been performative, it was also cathartic. So I made up, a sign, went down to the busiest intersection in town here in Richmond, which is the second biggest city in St. County, 10,000 people here, out of 100,000 in St. Croix County. And at the busiest intersection in town at rush hour, I had a sign, basically lock the crosswalks, voicing my opposition to this and, saying we should, deport Musk, impeach Trump. But then as the April 1st election of Susan Crawford was approaching, I was like, I just can't sit on my butt like I've always done, and cross my fingers and hope it all works out. So what I did is, started to get involved in the local Democrat Party, figured I needed to do more than, kind of minimal effort voting. Not to say that's, not important. You got to start someplace, but, pretty much have always focused on, voting in every, election up and down the ballot, primary, spring, fall, whatever. Putting up some lawn signs, maybe throwing some cash occasionally at candidates. Of course, it's a little ironic being on the flip side of that now. But I thought we had a pretty good shot with Kamala, in 24. So, did not want to leave anything, on the field. Didn't want to again take it for granted that it would all work out. So I felt I had to get out there and start helping out. And so, as started knocking on doors, talking to people, understanding, hearing their fear, frustration, anger about what was already going on. And then, as you may recall, Susan Crawford won handily by 10 points. And I was like, there's this thing coming up on April 5th, 25, Hands Off by Indivisible. And I'm like, maybe we could do something like that, and maybe more than me would show up. So created an event on Mobilize Saturday, and this was 3 days before Saturday. Saturday morning, 95 people had signed up, and 250 people showed up.
Wow.
Including not just Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. And so that's kind of how I got into it. Then decided to start a congressional campaign. It's going to be a tough challenge here in the 7th District. As you may know, Wisconsin's considered one of the more gerrymandered states and has been since 2010. But I think we got a heck of a chance. I mean, see what happened with Chris Taylor's election, last month, upwards of almost a 20-point swing. And I've talked to numerous Republicans and independents that are pretty upset with the way things are going. Yeah. And I think, anecdotally, I think we might be 5-7 points away. And I think my prognostication is based on, past returns, which of course do not guarantee future results. This administration knows no bottom. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
The more unpopular Trump gets, the more desperate he's going to become, and the more dangerous he's going to become. And it's not like one day he's going to wake up and be FDR, right? With some new deal that revitalizes the economy and turns things around. So I think by the time we hit November, his approval is going to be really low, and we got a heck of a chance. But I do think it's important for us to take a step back and say, well, it's real easy to focus on a single person as being the root of the problem, but that's actually not true. I mean, there's crazy people everywhere, right? Right, left, middle, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, whatever color your skin is, whatever your culture is. But the whole point of at least the political party system in the United States is to not let those people attain power. And people that have failed us are the Republican Party.
Yes,
because they can stop this any time.
Yep.
And I think in the 7th District, people are looking at what the heck has Tom Tiffany done for us here over the past number of terms. I can't think of a gall darn thing. So I think people are really looking for a change and someone who's going to speak up, step up, and push back.
And let me just say, am I going to? No, I guess I'm good. Tom Tiffany is important because he's running for governor now too. So I think your district is super critical, where as much as you getting into office in Congress, we also need to prevent Tom Tiffany from getting into office as governor. So the more we can just kind of leverage that and make it part of your campaign, because exactly as you said, they've done nothing. They blame us for everything. They make us feel shame when they're all these awful things that they are affiliated with. And, you know, just not giving up on this Epstein file and how they've just protected and enabled those groups. So I think you're doing. Also, I just wanted to add, I've talked to Ginger Murray a couple of times, and I understand you guys are kind of doing a cooperative campaign. What I think,
yep, we're doing a lot of collaborative events.
Awesome. I think that's the best idea ever. We need these primaries, but we need multiple Democrats working together. I think that's fantastic. That's a model we need to see everywhere.
Yeah, and a big part of it is, you know, we're you know, even between Fred, Ginger, and I, we're going to spend no time attacking each other, because it's not a good use of time, not a good use of resources, and we all want the same thing. We want this seat to flip. Of course, 100%. We all think we're the better candidate. That's what the primary is going to find out. But we need to present a united front and bring people together.
Perfect. Questions, guys? I'll let you guys have. I've been chatting away already.
I was just going to say that's what I see, in the Democratic Party is, we've got like the centrists and the corporate Dems that are attacking grassroots Democrats. And it's like, we need to win, but we need to win. That is the most important thing right now, because that's what Republicans do. Republicans, they might not like each other, but they work together to get the win. And at this point, we just need the win. And we need to, I think people, as long as they are informed and they have visibility right now, centrist Dems and corporate Dems, they're taking visibility away from grassroots candidates. And if they just had the visibility, which is kind of the whole reason why I'm even on this podcast right now, is because I want to be part of boosting these people up to get the visibility, because we're literally fighting in our own party.
Right. Yep. And I appreciate that perspective. And when it comes to, again, a lot of the traditionalist, people that have been in office a long time, which does bring up, the question of whether term limits might not be a bad idea to, keep fresh blood, fresh ideas through the Congress. I'm sure, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, I'm sure they're nice guys. I'm sure they've been effective legislators, in their time for a normal course of business, but they are not reading the room, man. They are not the guys, for the moment. And we need to act even more than just an opposition party. We need to be dissidents. And we need to, do more than, write strongly worded letters. And I want to give people credit that things I think have improved, a little bit, but we need people that are willing to be bold, fearless, relentless, innovative. And, one of the things that probably comes from being within any institution for a long, long time is you just accept the ways of working as being normative.
Yeah.
We've always done stuff, and, not to plug the outsider, perspective too much, but, having not been, stultified or calcified by the institution, there's really nothing we should be leaving on the table when it comes to ideas about how to, not just push back, but, provide leadership. Trying to guide people on where we think our vision, of the country is. And, I've kind of developed a litmus test that I still find effective to this day. Namely, if I think about doing something and it makes me a little nervous, well, then that's a sign I should freaking do it, and do it right now. So this hesitation and timidity and lack of courage, I just don't think is helping anybody.
So digging in a little bit on that, on courage, right now we're seeing, and because of your background as someone in tech, we're now seeing the attempts to create a technocracy and the attempts to move past constitutional order and into more of a feudalistic order from these tech bros and robber barons. At least that's my read on it. We have some people who are really extreme. We have Peter Thiel. We have Alex Karp. We have folks who are in Palantir specifically, in companies like that are creating an institutional bond of necessity for them. What will you do when elected to prevent privatization of our individual data, of our rights towards tech expansionism? Because they want to accelerate and expand without regulation and rule. What will you do to prevent that?
Well, I think, regulation, is certainly essential, whether it has to do with, use of social media by children, how organizations collect data, what they do with that data. My big picture perspective is I've kind of felt that evolutionary wise, the human species just isn't quite ready for social media and how to process it and how to handle it. What's interesting about this is that, despite being in IT for, 30 plus years, it really wasn't until my campaign that I started getting into social media. So I've been in some ways, self-isolated from all that stuff. And my kids grew up just on the edge of it where it was starting to become a thing, but not a huge thing. But, I worry about this, obviously, not just for all of us, but future generations. I'm a grandfather for the first time, and think about what kind of environment and future is my grandson and going to encounter moving forward. I'm a big fan, of trying to unplug, detach, touch the grass, go out into real life. But I think, I don't know, a part of it is we need to raise taxes on these people, and because if they've got extraordinary amounts of money. And I'll not being a finance guy, but sometimes it mystifies me how these people can be worth so much when they're not actually making any money, but they're doing incredible damage. And you guys probably are familiar with, there's some new legislation in California about a billionaire tax or something like that, and those people are pushing back pretty hard at it, which is I think pretty revealing. I mean, the only reason you push that back is because you feel entitled. Well, I deserve not having to pay taxes because I'm a job creator and a wealth creator. And my thoughts on that is doing it at the state level is going to be pretty tough, because then that will just set up bidding turf battles like for NFL stadiums and stuff like that. And that we need to really need to do that at a national level. And if these guys are threatening that, hey, we're going to leave the United States if you don't give us what we want, I'm like, well, let me hold the door open for you. Partially because I don't believe them. And if they want to go someplace else to do business where their tax liability is better, I don't think they'd enjoy, access to the same kind of market and the talents, innovation. But it's a free country. So I think there needs to be again regulation on the investments that are being done, particularly around AI and data centers. As an architect, I need to be thoughtful a little bit about just not discounting the possibility that this stuff might be useful, but I do have great concerns about environmental costs, impact on the electrical grid. Again, the pervasiveness that this is going to possibly go throughout our society. What's the likely outcome going to be if it works out reasonably well without a lot of collateral damage? Is increased productivity, right? We've seen productivity increase, particularly through IT and technology, many-fold over the past many decades. And so if this happens with this, although having been a part of the IT business, I've seen these hype cycles many times. So I think there is a non-trivial possibility that the AI bubble, it's gonna burst sometime. When it's gonna burst, what the impact's gonna be, hard to say. But if we're going to be increasing worker productivity, how about some of that? Those proceeds go to help supporting the workforce.
Yeah,
who just continuing to make the executives and the shareholders more and more money.
Yeah.
I just have two things to add to what you're saying as well, just because I know, as a former educator myself, these are things that I saw at the early education level before the study actually came out. There was a study, Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath came out. He's a cognitive neuroscientist who studies human learning. And he said that Gen Z is the very first generation that is not outperforming their parents cognitively. They are lower in attention, memory, literacy, numeracy, executive functioning, IQ. And it all happened, he said that the study started in 1962, and we have all this data of every generation being smarter, more cognitively capable than the generation prior until about 2010. And when they gathered all of the data, they found that around 2010 is when technology was introduced into classrooms. And then it just took a deep dive, like it fell off of a cliff. And it has literally harmed our children. And this is something that, like I said, I have seen at the early childhood education level. I think technology needs to be the hell out of classrooms. It doesn't belong in classrooms. I don't find anything that is beneficial for technology in the classrooms. I think that, we had as a millennial, I was born in 1982. We had our computer lab, which was about, 45 minutes to less than an hour of computers. Now kids are on computers for 4 to 5 hours a day. Yeah. And of those 4 to 5 hours a day, they are losing 38 minutes of information. They're not retaining it because they're just skimming. Their brains have been wired to skim. So that's the first thing that I feel, when we're talking about technology and how we're going to handle regulating and things like that, I absolutely think it needs to be out of the classrooms. The other thing was the data centers. I live in Texas. We're running out of water. Corpus Christi is set to run out of water next year. And right now, throughout Texas, we have 140 data centers projected to be built by 2030. This is detrimental for the environment, and this is happening countrywide. This isn't just like Texas is kind of like they're killing the state pretty much. I mean, we're running out of water everywhere. So how is that? And in Wisconsin, what are you seeing? And I don't really follow politics in Wisconsin, so I'm not really sure kind of what you're seeing on your end. But how are you going to address that? Because that is something that is a real problem, and if you're not seeing it now, it's coming.
Yep, and Walter, I'm sure you could pipe in a little bit, being a native here, but there's been a number of deals that have come to light where municipalities have entered into non-disclosure agreements with data center developers that not even the council knew or any of the population knew, and when that came to light, there's been significant pushback. And and what's interesting, as you guys probably know, is this is an issue that cuts across partisan ideology. It's a Republican, Democrat, independent concern, and to the extent that the Wisconsin state legislature, which is still in Republican hands, is looking at some pretty legitimate legislation about, for example, no more non-disclosure agreements, and you can't build some of this stuff without local input, which is a little different than public service commission stuff.
Yeah, they're cutting voters out here.
Yes, and people are pissed, and they're pushing back, and many of the developments in Wisconsin have stopped.
Yes,
either suspended or canceled, and so it's pretty clear. The population is very, very, very suspicious and very much against this. And of course, one of the possibilities of why Wisconsin's a particular area of investment is we have a lot of water. Lake Michigan on the east side, Lake Superior on the north side, and in particularly the much of the northern part of Wisconsin. You can't really walk more than 2 or 3 steps before you walk into a swamp or a river or a lake. And then we're often we're really concerned about the demand on the electrical grid. Some hyper data centers that are being considered in Wisconsin that by themselves would consume the same amount of energy as all households in the entire state.
Yeah, that's Oh, go
Walter,
ahead.
before you jump in, I just wanted to make two quick things. Want to go back real quick to the idea on the tech in classrooms, and our friend Naida Green brings up a really good point, and I absolutely agree on it, because it is really important, especially with kids with disabilities, is the ability to use tech as a equity tool to ensure that kids who have learning disabilities or who have needs for it have access to it. But I do tend to agree that the use of tech is way overused these days in classrooms, and those who don't need it shouldn't be using it, because it is disruptive to their learning and their ability to focus. You can see it in your own kids. If you take their tablet away for a while, or you make them go outside and do that more often, and they're off their screens more often than not, they tend to be, at least mine anyways, tend to be much less aggressive, and they
Less
have
anxious.
less anxious. They're more kids, and they act like what I remember being like as a kid. And that may be trying to project my childhood onto them, but I remember a good childhood, so I want to project that towards them.
Well, there's data that backs it up, though, as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Not
That
pushing back that tech itself is bad
Yeah.
in classrooms in many ways. I think totally agree. I just want to make sure that we call out the ability for equity, because that, in my eyes, like, that's the goal, is equality and equity. I wanted to ask Chris, you were talking about like the non-disclosure agreements, and Walter, you and I have both interviewed Brittany Jones, who is one of the Courage for Democracy candidates running for governor in Oregon, and she spoke about the use of treaty law and the ability for treaty law to be used to prevent the building or slow down and ensure that these building permits and these data centers and other environmentally damaging buildings go through rigorous treaty law review, and we're not using that. As a member of Congress, you have the power to create law and ensure that we have laws on the books. How would you ensure that you are, for your district and for the broader good of the U.S., how would you ensure that you can use congressional law and treaty law that we have to prevent these types of non-disclosure agreements, these destructive practices towards the environment? How would you see your role in that as a member of Congress?
Well, of course, that does have special resonance here in Wisconsin, particularly in the 7th district, where 7 of the Wisconsin's 11 federally recognized tribes are in the 7th district. That being said, I may have missed the memo, but I have not heard of any proposals of data centers in northern Wisconsin and of what's also known as the ceded territories. I think that's the treaty of 1854 or 42, forget exactly. But on that point, on a different issue, one thing that is of concern to us up here in the North Woods is the Enbridge Line 5, that's coming from Canada going through Detroit, and it's illegally been going through the Bad River Band Indian Reservation for about 13 years now, when the band did not renew their lease, and now they're rerouting it around the reservation, which is technically outside the boundary, but it's still in the ceded territory. And so, we just closed a comment period on Saturday for the Wisconsin DNR on public comments about, so you're technically avoiding the boundaries of the modern reservation, but you're still going through the ceded territory, which guarantees tribal members rights for hunting, fishing, gathering, and in northern Wisconsin, like in same thing in northern Minnesota, again, where we've got some controversy over mining, which I think is a horrible idea. I mean, and the problem is there's just too much water. There's water everywhere, and it's all interconnected, through the water table and the bedrock and the streams, and so didn't directly answer your question, Nick, but people are considering that tribal rights that were guaranteed in treaties can be possibly effective. I mean, it remains to be seen, exactly what's going to happen. But I just don't think we should leave any stone unturned. But this might be, again, like I said earlier, one of those few issues where there seems to be bipartisan consensus. So we might find that even some of that when I get elected and then seated, introducing some federal legislation on permitting and non-disclosure agreements. Very much in some ways like non-compete agreements. I understand why a company would want to not tell their competitors what they're doing, but at the expense of transparency and visibility when there's state and federal funding available, I just think it's a non-starter.
Well, I think one of the issues though too, and you've kind of addressed it, is the messaging issue where we've had all the local newspapers have been bought up. They try to push things through where people don't even know. I saw that Charlie Barron's, he's a Wisconsin comedian. He was up giving, and he's been really good. I actually reached out to him to try to get him to talk because he has this like Northern Wisconsin persona, but he's just like, these data centers are a problem. And the fact that they hide them, and this is where I really kind of have a problem because the Democratic Party in general, and, and you're in Congress, and getting back to what Evie was saying before too, everything has been turned into scrolling where people don't read anymore, and we have malicious algorithms. You're seeing some classrooms where they're like, well, we have to get, our phone out of the classroom, but then the kids are still sitting there scrolling in their free time. And it's just like, to such a large extent, we've conceded messaging, and we allow Republicans to control these messages. What can you do in Congress to just emphasize more visibility for rational ideas? And I mean, part of it is you have to come onto this platform and talk to us because we get frozen out in so many different spheres. You see all these bigger platforms, all they want to do is talk about the latest thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene said. She's not even in Congress anymore, right? And it's just all these things that are distractions. We are talking about important issues and we barely get any visibility. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, again, I think transparency is pretty darn essential. One of the things that's been happening in Wisconsin and other places across the country is diversion of public education funding to private schools.
That's
right
awful, yeah.
Through the voucher program. And one brilliant idea, how much of a difference it's going to make, but hopefully it's a step in the right direction, is personally, if you want to send your kids to parochial private school, God bless, all the power to you, but that should not, you should not be siphoning any funding off of public education, particularly given how forefront education is here in the state of Wisconsin and its founding and constitution. But what municipalities have been starting to do is pass ordinances so that when people get their property tax bills, they see a line item that says, this is how much of your property tax went to fund private schools. So just an illustration of how can we start to try to, break through this a little bit. For whatever it's worth, as an enterprise architect, a big part of effectively managing the IT assets of your organization is good governance, which is, again, a decision framework that is trying to give all stakeholders equitable rights. And it's driven, based on from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, a UN organization. Transparency is the number one thing, which is how can you possibly govern and steward your investments in assets and the outcomes you want if nobody knows what's going on? And of course, other dimensions have to do with fairness, accountability, so on and so forth. So, that's part of what's interesting about, stepping out of my comfort zone in, architecture and governance, and then into, politics and government, is there's a lot of similar principles, in mind, including that your governance framework is supposed to be based on a set of principles to guide your decision-making as there are different regime changes in your company, to try to provide, a lodestone, going forth and some, balance and anchoring. And in the United States government, those set of principles, it's called the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, we accountability to that and alignment with that, I think, is something that, we have to, maintain our focus on, which of course is, why as a part of the Courage, candidate community, we got to start with accountability. When I get elected, I'd be happy to work, as they say on TV, right? Reach across the aisle to work with my colleagues on the other side on common sense legislation for the benefit of the American people. But there needs to be one really non-negotiable prerequisite, which is you got to help us get this guy out of office and all of his henchmen. Because what is the point of passing any new legislation when these guys ignore the law? Passing new laws makes no sense when the current administration is lawless and nobody is doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So perhaps
they counted how many times Pete Hegseth lied under oath the other day. And I thought to myself, when did we quit arresting people for that?
Right. When is this like okay? Like, oh yeah, they're breaking the law. It's a day that ends in Y. I guess let's go on and talk about this great new federal program or blah blah blah. And
on that topic though, it's like because we've been talking about more pressure in our state governments because obviously the federal government isn't doing anything. How do we apply more pressure on the state? And also, I want to get because with your background, I'm more concerned about election integrity, and talking to the election experts who say there are big red flags about what's been happening in the last few election cycles. And you as a data guy, they're saying the issue is, it's in these machines, like malicious programming in the machines. What are your thoughts on just doing audits? I mean, the Republicans talk about election interference all the time. Why can't we say, okay, yeah, that's it. Why do the Democrats deny it the same way Republicans deny, climate change? Democrats are like, well, that's not an issue. It's like preserving the integrity of our elections is an issue. We should be cracking open the machines and just making sure everything is operational before every election. Doesn't that make a little bit of sense? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think, particularly like in Wisconsin, I forget how many, towns there are, but it's, the voting system in Wisconsin is incredibly decentralized and deliberately. And in fact, Nick, you might know that having, single points of failure with monolithic systems is, that's the way we used to do stuff back in the 70s and 80s. And some of that's still quite around because, as you know, it's really hard to get rid of technology once it's up and running, supporting the business. So instead of having a small number of huge things that are prone to failure and easy targets, we want to have a large number of small things, distributed across the landscape to handle that. I'm pretty confident that, we are going to have elections this fall, no doubt about it. But is the federal government in particular going to throw sand into the gears? Absolutely. I mean, it's pretty clear they're already doing it, right? With trying to pass the SAVE Act, which is going to, disenfranchise. And again, they're being so disingenuous when they go on the talk shows about, well, you got to, like, what did Todd Blanche say?
Yeah. For a restaurant, you have to show an ID. Yeah.
You got to show an ID to go to a restaurant. And people are like, dude, you got to stop eating at strip clubs. So but that's not what the SAVE Act is about. It's about, as you guys know, making sure that your ID matches your original name, and if you're married, and change your name and other, sorts of legal changes. It's a huge freaking hassle. Of course, my wife, when I got remarried to her, about 10. This year's our 10th anniversary. Better not forget that. She said, because she changed her name after actually keeping her previous husband's name for like 30 years. She's like, if guys had to change their names, this would be so easy. But, and then, the executive order about, mandating that between DOJ, DHS, and the Postal Service, that they're going to try to come up with a national voter list and somehow get the post office involved in mail-in balloting and banning mail-in balloting. It's pretty clear, and probably don't need to inform you guys or your listeners, but the Republicans are running scared. I mean, they are freaking freaked out. They would not be doing the things they're doing if they weren't overly concerned. But, on another dimension of that, the redistricting is rather troubling, but it's positive, I think, even though it's unsavory, this is, again, getting back to that litmus test. It's like, gee, Republicans are doing this redistricting, again, often driven by the legislature instead of by voters, like in California or in Virginia and other places. But they're, to not respond in kind would have been very unwise, in my opinion. And we can't just keep bringing knives to a gunfight, right? And now the Republicans are like, "What? You brought a gun to a gunfight? What? This is very troubling and very surprising." And I'm reminded of a quote by Dwight Eisenhower, who said, in trying to understand and solve a problem, I find that it's actually better to make the problem bigger than trying to make it smaller. And what I'm hoping that happens, even though it's unsavory, I don't like it, but it's the right thing to do, is that if we do this, and both parties just get into a gerrymandering redistricting war that everybody gets pissed off about, and including Republicans. And I don't, I'm not sure that Republican voters are happy with it. Republican politicians are all for it, right? So there's a lot of things that we need to focus on and trying to make. Again, elections need to be secure, but there is no empirical evidence that they are not secure as it relates to undocumented folks voting and stuff like that. When it comes back to the machines, I am not a election counting machine expert. I know IT systems. My understanding is they're generally not connected to the internet. They are regularly audited. I think it was in Clay County, Georgia, it was also Tina, what's her name? Tina Peters in Colorado, went in to try to find some stuff, broke state election law, and she's been sentenced to jail, and Trump issued a pardon for a state offense and blah, blah, blah. So I think, the remedies that we need to focus on, in my opinion, is we need to make voting as accessible but still secure. One dimension towards that would be to make at least federal elections national holidays, right? That's the way it works pretty much anywhere. Expansion of mail-in voting, but that's really a state thing. But the federal government, is clearly exposing their paranoia about what's going on. Where, for example, in neighboring Minnesota, they have been demanding to get the voter rolls as a part of a gangster intimidation, extortion, protection racket. Like, hey, we'll stop killing your people through immigration enforcement if you give up your SNAP and Medicaid rolls, repeal all of your sanctuary city policies, and you give us your voter rolls. I mean, it's very disturbing. So I don't think the machines and stuff like that are the biggest issue. When there's really quite a bit more that we can do, and we need to push back on. Just the fact that people need to vote. I think we're also pretty lucky in this part of the country, Minnesota, Wisconsin. We have generally pretty high voter turnout. I think it's in the mid upper 80s. But that's going to be a big part of, I think, Dems being successful this fall is getting the people out that sat out for whatever reason. I think Republican turnout is going to be diminished in some ways. So, and then I think there's going to be a lot of independents and Republicans that are going to vote Democrat.
So I did look it up a little bit for the congressional district. And I could be wrong based on some of the vote totals that I gathered. But I was looking at it, and between the two major party candidates, 58% of your current district voted between those two major party candidates. And that's even if that's the low end of voter turnout for your district specifically, that's still pretty high in this country, is over half of the.
Yeah, it's still at 58%, we could definitely do a lot.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
My question there is, with that number, there's %2 of the vote of voters that did not, or eligible voters possibly, and there's a lot of crossover. You were talking about reaching people who are on the other side of the aisle, because progressive policies are common sense. They're simple, common sense ideas. And a lot of people do support them when you strip out the political bullshit that is thrown around and the hate and the hate driven policies and hate driven politics. What do you advocate for to help you get across the aisle and reach those in your district? What are you doing to reach those in your district who are either non-voters from the last election or those who voted across the aisle and are willing to look at someone new? Or is it too early for you right now to be trying across the aisle? Is Wisconsin an open primary, I guess is my question on that too.
Yeah, it is. It is an open primary, so that is something to be mindful of. But you can only do so much, and I am focusing predominantly on progressive or Democrats as a whole and independents. But I've had interactions and sometimes unsolicited. There's this one guy up in the North Woods, blue collar guy. He's sent me an email via the campaign website and said, and this was back in January where things were really horrible in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which as Walter knows, St. Croix County, we neighbor Minneapolis, St. Paul. So there was overflow of that into my local area in a real noticeable way. But he was like, so what do you think of President Trump's leadership and how ICE and CBP are, doing their thing? And the way he worded it, I was like, I couldn't quite tell if it was left leaning or right leaning or in the middle. So he was pretty kind of deadpan with it. And I said, well, when it comes to Trump's leadership, not a big fan. And when it comes to ICE and CBP, really think we need to hold people accountable that regularly violate people's First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, Eighth, 10th, and 14th Amendment rights. And the guy emailed me back and said, that is exactly what I wanted to hear.
Perfect.
I am a Republican who voted for Trump twice, and I just cannot believe what is going on. And I just, at my wits' ends about what's going on. So that's a means to get to what I think is a unifying thing. There are some people that think it might not be the right message, but we got to follow the freaking law.
Yeah.
And, as you may know, the Republicans have long claimed, and I don't know how they got this designation, to be quite honest. I'm sure there's some history behind it, as the law and order party. Maybe that was true back in the 60s and 70s. I don't know. But it sure as heck isn't today. And the same thing about, the Republicans owning, the idea of supporting veterans, supporting the troops and patriotism. I don't think it really does us any good to say that those are characteristics only of a particular political party. I think those are things that we don't want from everybody. I think the other thing up here in the North Woods that resonates pretty much across partisan ideologies is the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the 7th district's the most rural district in Wisconsin. It's like 58% rural. You get up into the Northeast and it's just a lot of trees and a lot of lakes. But that's one of the things we like about it. And that's one of the things that a lot of people that don't live here like about it. So, tourism is a huge, it's not the top industry. I think manufacturing still number 1. I think eggs 2, but I think tourism might be 3, or healthcare. So, but it's in the top 5. And it has to do with our pristine wilderness, the forest, the rivers, the lakes, Lake Superior, just an amazing, place on this planet Earth with, 1/5, right, of the world's fresh water. So whether it's during the winter, whether it's during the summer, people really value being able to, like we did this last weekend, it was Wisconsin Fishing Opener. And, I got out up on the Chippewa flowage up in Hayward, and man, it's just so beautiful up there. I didn't catch any fish.
Yeah.
But that's really not the point, to be quite honest, is to get out there and enjoy what nature has to offer. And there's just so many sportsmen, so many outdoor recreational enthusiasts. A lot of people make their money off of the tourism. The environment is a pretty pretty simple through line, I think, for.
And when the mining tailings show up from the industry destroying the boundary waters, it's going to ruin the whole northern part of Wisconsin, and the Republicans just push that through. Yeah.
And
that decision was just so troubling. I mean, and I don't know about you guys. I've had the privilege of going up to the boundary waters a number of times.
It's heartbreaking.
It's so freaking cool. It's a unique place, unlike any place in the earth. And northern Wisconsin's a close second.
Our kids need to drink water. It's like our kids need to drink water is kind of what we need to run on, and it's really frustrating.
Yep. And then the third thing, Nick, is the economy. Oh my God! I mean, if you're a farmer. I mean, and I really don't want to get into chastising people based on what motivated them to vote the way they did when they did, but it is what it is, right? But to have a leader in charge that basically appears from what all the actions of his government is, they hate farmers. They don't actually love farmers. They hate farmers because they're not doing anything.
Well, they want their land is what it seems like they're doing. It seems like they want them to go bankrupt so they can buy their land. I think that's a strong argument.
Yeah. That it could be, corporate farming versus family farming. And of course that line's blurring a little bit because farms had to scale to become more competitive. But, related to that is, the equipment you have to buy now to be competitive, $1 million tractors, you can't repair them yourself. The price of diesel is freaking over $5. We're in the starting of the planting season here. Fertilizer prices are going up. The world, ag market has totally been upside down. And again, that happened from the first Trump administration, destroying those markets. So whether it's the price of gas, I hate that sometimes these really important issues get boiled down to such microeconomic things. But that's something people see every couple times a week, where one of the things I try to keep in balance is that perhaps unlike many of us, a lot of people just don't pay attention to politics the way we do now, and that doesn't mean to suggest we're better. We just might be a little over anxious, and I'm an information, I just cannot get enough information. But there are a lot of people that just don't pay attention for whatever reason. I think we want to try to change that. That's a part of, I think, the vision for the future is we need to say, democracy is not a spectator sport. It is a full contact participation sport. And, you have a stake in this, and it makes a difference. And, could this be a demonstration of, for people that said, it really doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all the same and all, it's like, well, actually, it does.
That's a majority of the people who didn't vote. They said that either they didn't feel like their vote counted, or they hate politics. My very first time voting was in the Bush-Gore vote, and they've been screaming that since then. My very first time, I was 18 and I was like, hey, I can vote for the first time, and this is exciting. And then, of course, my candidate that I voted for didn't win, but all we heard was, doesn't matter, our vote doesn't count, blah, 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 blah. And then it's been just a add-on to that every single year since.
Yeah.
And I keep telling people, no, your vote absolutely counts. You just have to do it. You got to get out there.
Yep. I mean, we had county board races here in St. Clair County in the spring election, and one of my associates, he was ahead by 3 votes, and then they did some recounting, and he lost by 2 votes.
Yeah.
But
all that.
So, every vote.
And that ties into the messaging, though, too. And I mean, we're all got the economic terrorism we face, where we got our backs against the wall so much we don't even have time to see how much we're being oppressed because we're too exhausted. But then we can't get fair media coverage of anything because the media just chases after the guys interviewing the most extreme people on the right. So we don't ever get any conversations. So it's just is kind of this everything we've talked about all the way down to social media, where our kids, they've deliberately taken, the ability to just read a book out of schools, and kids are just, and it's like technology can be used for good, but it's no good to just hand a kid a tablet and be like, teach yourself. It's like we've got people that are just, it's the same. You see that with parents. Like I never gave my kids tablets, because we would draw on things, but it's like I've had advantages where I was able to do that. And it's just so much of our society, it's just this perfect storm of all these factors that are used to steal our power from us. So,
but one thing I do think the consolidation of legacy media, alignment with the the right side is disturbing. I think if we look at like CBS, it doesn't work. Ratings are down. And one of the things that I think is a really compelling response, not that there aren't some decent legacy teams out there, but I think they're really struggling in a lot of ways, is you guys. Independent media is having a golden age that I think is likely unrivaled in world history. I mean, so getting back to the technology thing, right? The good with the bad, the fact that there's still one liability, which is people can self-select, right? What they choose to get in or which channels they choose to get informed of. But the diversity of people like you guys, doing the hard work, building audiences, messages, branding. It's really, 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 really exciting. And I really want to give you guys kudos.
Thanks, Chris. I want to ask on a question on that because I asked a similar question towards Brittany Jones, the gubernatorial candidate in Oregon, and she would have a different approach because she would be a governor, and she has a very different set of powers than a congressional member, than someone in the House of Representatives, and at the federal level and our state versus federal stuff. However, I think the main part of the question still stands is how would you maintain the connection with independent media to ensure that you are not getting sucked into just the legacy media sphere of outlet information, so that all of our networks continue, and the growth that we're doing with you, the speaking that maybe not us specifically, it would be great if it was us to stay in touch with, but for media itself, how would you encourage the inclusion of new independent media sources into your both congressional run, but also as a representative?
Well, I think it's safe to say, I have had, whether this is my responsibility or just the way it works or whatever, but, I have had one interview with Legacy Media, a TV station out of Wausau. It was a great time. They were wonderful. And that's really the biggest so that's the biggest media market in the 7th CD, with the exception of where I live, because we live so close to Minneapolis-St. Paul, we're a part of the Minneapolis-St. Paul media market. So will the Twin Cities, TV and radio stations notice me? Maybe, might after the primary. So, to be quite honest, it has been through independent media that I've been getting 95% of my exposure. So if it weren't for you guys,
it's working.
Yes.
And so, what commitment can I make doing it? Well, build relationships, get positive outcomes. I think that's a big part of it. Am I going to talk to somebody because they shove a microphone in my face? Probably, because I can't freaking shut up. But I think, particularly having channels that get here into the North Woods, so whether it's through, you guys, similar groups, local public radio, stuff like that. Plus, being present in the district and being committed to, roving around the region, which is larger than the country of Denmark, and connecting with voters in real life. So I think the IRL part of this, I also think can't be understated. Again, we can take advantage of technology to deal with the geographic expanse, but nothing's better than, being face to face with people as much as we can. So, that's going to be my commitment, is to spend as much time in the district listening to people when the Congress is not in session. However, again, I'm assuming the Democrats are going to take the House. Pretty confident, but again, I had those assurances in the past. But the current Congress, as you guys probably know, Mike Johnson. Oh my God, this is the most unproductive House session in U.S. history, and he recesses the House for unspeakable reasons continually. And so, to me, those opportunities need to be taken, and hopefully we won't have to deal with that situation, come next year. but that, the Democrat, I suppose representatives have this tension about, should I go back to the home district or should I stay in Washington? I think people should have stayed in Washington and made a huge, big deal about why the hell aren't we doing our freaking job? And these are the things that people should need to be talking about. But that, that also kind of gets to your point, Nick, of, is that to get the attention of national legacy media? Or do we need to, think about leveraging more novel, modern channels?
What's your webpage? Your webpage, real quick.
Yeah, so the website is armstrongforwisconsin.com.
Okay, perfect.
And I'll actually put a QR code of it.
Oh, perfect.
We've had a little QR code in the corner, but I'll hide that one. I got this picture off of your webpage itself. So Chris Armstrong for Wisconsin.
Yeah, every time I look in the mirror, I'm like,
yeah, I get that same feeling. Yeah, I know that.
And Chris, I wanted to, before you left, obviously I want to give you a moment here I'll put you just full screen for a second, give yourself a pitch to close yourself out.
Sure.
But I want to have Abel Chavez, our other interviewee, come on afterwards with you to be able to introduce and cross-pollinate platforms, because he's not a Courage, unless I'm mistaken, Walter, he's not a Courage for Democracy.
I can't remember if he is or not.
I don't remember if you are. Abel, I looked you up and I couldn't find you on their webpage. However, I want to encourage you to become one, and we'll talk about it maybe as the show goes on. But Chris, I'm going to give you here a moment to platform yourself and your candidacy and what you're running on. And then if you have just a couple minutes after that, we'll bring Abel on and introduce the two of you so we can help build this network of candidates who are trying to make change for America and do something good for all of us. Right. So Chris, take it away. I'm going to make you full size here, and I'm going to mute the rest of us for a moment and give you a couple minutes here to put your message out on what you want your voters to be able to hear.
Well, thanks again, guys, for the opportunity. Trying to boil it down to a 6-step process. We got to continue the resistance. We've got a long way to go till we get to the November elections, and a lot of horrible things are going to happen that we got to push back at. We need to retake the Congress. That is almost certainly going to happen in the House, and I think every day Senate gets better and better chances. We need to remove Trump and the other people that are in office, to remove the obstacles that are in front of us. And then we need to restore democracy. And I used to have my 5th one being rebuild America, but I'm thinking we need to think about a different tact on that, which is to reimagine what America is going to be for the next 250 years. And then the 6th step is we got to do some reconciliation. We got to hold these people accountable for the sake of our history and the people of the world, that we just do not find this conduct acceptable. And the way that I think that we'll know whether, the ideas I've got and how I'm going to work with other members of Congress to turn things around here, at least in CD7, is going to be, what's the likelihood that our kids and our grandkids, when they leave after they graduate high school, that they're going to come back to the 7th district to build their lives for their descendants as well.
As I unmute everyone here, Chris, thank you so much for that.
Oh no, we lost it. Okay. Perfect.
And we've
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful message there too. I'm going to bring Abel up top here for us also. Thank you for being here. First off, again, thank you for being here with us. I appreciate you coming out and speaking to us and our audience and those who are trying to make this happen. Like, we want this to happen. Evie, thank you for joining us so far for this conversation too, and being a part of it and asking some wonderful questions with us. And now we have a new candidate coming on with us, Abel Chavez, candidate for Congress of, it's California 48, I believe, is your district. And Abel, I wanted to give you a moment to introduce yourself and also to meet Chris, who is a Courage for Democracy candidate out of Wisconsin CD7, and hopefully begin creating a network, another new connection and network for candidates to meet off of. So Abel, welcome. It's good to meet you. Do you mind introducing yourself real fast before we get into any of the conversation? Oh, we cannot hear you.
Oh, hit the. Oh no!
Does that sound better?
Yep,
Yes,
we got you.
there we
There you
go.
go.
We got you.
So it's a quick one or the full,
Let's
thing?
do a quick intro, and then we'll give you once you and Chris have met a little bit, and he's Chris will be off here soon. We'll let you do a full long intro for yourself.
Okay, yeah, of course. So my name's Abel Chavez. I'm running in CA 48.
Perfect. That's the quick fast.
Awesome. I love it.
I love
To meet you, Abel. Chris Armstrong from northern Wisconsin. And just for my ignorance, Abel, where is the 48th? What kind of locale?
It's in Southern California. Yeah.
you guys will be calling
like-
soon, I hope.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, for whatever it's worth, my my grandfolks lived in Orange County.
Oh, okay.
In Corona Del Mar, so I'm kind of familiar with that part of South
Yeah.
LA.
Yeah. That's like I'm like, depending on traffic, depending on how the 91 is, probably like an hour and a half away, maybe sometimes an hour if I can muster it. Yeah.
So, Abel, a question for you: what brought you into this campaign, and what's your background? We've got Chris here, who's a IT specialist. I'm going to say that at least senior IT, did a lot of tech side and understands the tech field.
Let me just say, does Chris have
yeah.
to go? Are you still good, Chris?
Chris, are you good for a moment?
I probably should go, but I can hang for a couple
Okay,
more
if you have
minutes.
to go, just wave and you can take off, and we'll know.
Yeah, we don't want to hold you too long.
Yeah.
But Abel, what brought you in? And sorry, I got your name wrong in the
No.
beginning.
It's Abel. Yeah, no, it is Abel. So if you speak Spanish, it's Abel.
Amen.
But if it's
okay.
Abel. But if it's in English, you're saying it's Abel. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're
Okay.
right, yeah.
I like getting people's names right because people always screw mine
Identity.
up, and so
No, you're good.
I want to make sure everybody has their names right. So, what is your background and experiences that brought you into this race?
So there's I feel like I never explain it this way, right? But this is my first time explaining it this way. So let me see if it comes out right. But so first, I'm a teacher, so that's my main thing. So physics and chemistry teacher. But also, I'm also a business broker, so I help business owners retire. So when a business owner is like 65 years old, sometimes they don't have someone to take over their business, like their kids don't want it, and they're either going to let it go, and they're just going to just retire, and they have no way of getting out of it, right? Or they just die with the business, and this happens so many times. So what I do is I find, and I do this like super ethically, I find a young local entrepreneur that wants to take over that business. I train them. I give them all the resources they need. I give them everything that they might encounter. I find them like bookkeepers, payroll, all the stuff that they might need so that they can run the business efficiently. And then I get them, whatever, like a loan so that they can help the business owner retire. And then the business owner retires. They ride off into the sunset. The business owner trains the buyer. And then now we keep a business alive, a small business alive, and we can actually make them outcompete big business. So that's super important to me to keep the small business economy strong.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, and if maybe I'll bow out just because I got a gun out. But Abel, maybe you and I should talk. I'm 60, got my own IT company. I love what I do, so
I love that.
So I'm fortunate. Maybe I'll do this for the next 20 years. But the key thing is I don't want to have.
Exactly. And then sometimes if $1 million comes by your side, you go, oh, that sounds like a good good exit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You worked hard.
Oh, well,
Awesome.
Chris, thanks again for joining us, and I'm so glad we started this connection. We will make sure that we pass along information between the two of you so you can get in touch. Because this is fantastic. So, Chris, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Chris.
We'll talk with you soon.
And best of luck, Abel. Yeah, we'll talk with you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
And so, Abel, as we
He can't figure it out. There he goes.
there we go. We'll move you we'll move you to the front to the first spot here. Is
Yeah.
Abel, let's get to a long intro now. For you is you started introducing yourself a bit about your chemistry and physics teacher, which is amazing. I loved chemistry. I was really bad at physics. I couldn't get it. It just wasn't my thing. And you talked about your business and what you do and how you help others get out of or be able to retire. So tell us about yourself and what motivated you to now run for Congress in California.
Yeah. So real quick, that tidbit about the chemistry and the physics thing. Actually, I like the concept of physics. I don't like the math as much about it, but I mean, we'll still.
That's fair.
Because it can just get like. Yeah. I'm here that you can just keep going, you know, it just keeps getting harder and harder. So
I was an English major with a physics minor, so I know exactly what you mean. I wasn't in the class to do the math, but I had new approaches to things. So
yeah, I love it. I was just like, man, this is just like, it never ends. Like it just keeps getting harder. But the chemistry part, you know, what's funny about that one, I felt like more natural about I felt more natural about physics. I actually got a C, and I'll be honest with you guys. I got a C in chemistry in high school, and I was so upset about it that I was like, I'm going to learn chemistry and I'm going to teach chemistry because like, I can't do that. I can't be bad at things like that. So that's why I became a chemistry teacher. So it just goes to, you know, a little bit about me. I don't like being bad at things. But so the reason I started running is because, so I see a lot of things like in my life. I see a lot of things that are wrong with the world, and I try to fix them. That's what I do all the time. Like, and I remember having a conversation with my wife back in like 2019, and I was like, what if I found a job where I could fix people's problems for a living?
Yeah.
And then people just gave me money to fix their problems. And she was like, I don't know if anyone would pay you for that. And I was like, maybe. And all of a sudden, like, you know, it turns like I fall into this job where I'm helping business owners retire. And that, like, it's like the biggest puzzle in the world, you know, trying to figure out how to get them what they need and get them. So it naturally, to me, everything I've done in my life is fixing problems for my family, fixing problems for my community. I'm a school board member. And so this is not my normal pitch, but I'm used to fixing things. And I actually built my own computer also. So this is my computer. I really like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
it's got
that.
a doll in there.
It's got a doll in there. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And,
I've built my own computer too. This is awesome.
So
Gosh, I think you and Chris are going to have a really good conversation too, and have a lot of fun talking with each other.
I know Evie's got some questions from the educational or from anything. Evie, go ahead and take the floor.
I don't know. I Stephanie Hernandez commented on one of my postings, and she said, "Can you please boost Abel Chavez?" And I said, "Sure. Let me just dig in. You know, see if he's somebody I want to boost, because I don't just boost people because they tell me to boost people." But after I read your story and, you know, kind of where you came from and what you're about, and I really like you. And I was like, he is good for our country and we need to do this. So I posted a real long little boost for you. And it's making its rounds. People are restacking it and your name's getting out there. And I absolutely love that for you. But as an educator, I'm not in education anymore. You know, I got into education because I said, where can I make the biggest difference in education? Because honestly, I didn't have the patience for elementary. I absolutely didn't have the patience for middle school or high school. So I said, I want to work with 0 to 5. That is the most important part of a child's life. It's literally setting the building blocks for the foundation for their entire lives. I want to be part of that. That's where I feel like I can make the biggest difference.
I'm sorry, you said what age? What was that age that you
0
said?
to 5.
0 to 5. Okay.
Early education. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I started small and then worked my way up, front office manager, business owner, assistant director to a director. And when I finally got to the point where I could start making decisions and I could kind of run the machine, not just be a part of the machine, I was really discouraged because I felt like I was fighting against a current constantly. And I see you nodding. Like, I think that's every educator's nightmare right now. But one thing that I noticed was, as I got further along in my career, everything became corporatized. And it was no longer about the kids. It was about how can we make more money? How can we draw more revenue? How can we do this? And it just wasn't about the kids anymore. So I dug in deeper. Brain development is something that has always been my special interest. I absolutely love it. And I will read every single paper I can find on it. But a new study just came out by Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath. And he has a written testimony. You can find it online. He went before Congress to talk to him about this. And he said that, there was a huge decline. Since 1962, everything went up, 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 up. Generations were smarter than the last. They were more cognitively capable than the last. And then all of a sudden, 2010 hit. Okay, so what are your thoughts on that study? Because I already talked about the study earlier, but it was so validating for me because I'm sitting here as an early education director and I'm seeing it from that building block, from that early stages of life. I saw a huge difference. And I used to hear, my teachers saying, the kids are different. The kids are different. And I'm like, no, the environment's different. Something's changed. The kids are the same.
Yeah.
The environment has completely changed. And it was the introduction of technology that did it. I didn't start noticing it until like 2016, 2017. That's when I really saw the decline in real time. And then by 2022, I was like, I'm out. I cannot be a part of this machine anymore. I can't do this anymore. So as somebody who's an educator and somebody who's, I'm sure you've seen the same things going on with students, how are you going to regulate that and legislate that and bring that to light and educate, your constituents and saying like, hey, technology is great, but it's not great in the classroom when it comes to this, this, and this. Now, it's certain technology. I know there was somebody who had mentioned earlier that, technology has been great for special needs and things like that. And I don't think that's what the study was. I didn't read that was part of the study group. That was, I think it was just general education. But there is some technology that is okay, but I'm talking about general in the classrooms, children on computers, 4 to 5 hours a day. What say you?
What say I? No, honestly, like literally what you said, it's like verbatim. Like it's about the money.
Mm-hmm.
They get what's called ADA. So they get like $92 a day just so that a student shows up, and they don't care if the student learns because the student showed up. And that's what it's all about. And then all the money is going. We got more revenue. Perfect. Let's hire more administrators. And I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
When did the administrators teach the kids? Now, I'm sorry, but we keep getting more and more administrators, and it keeps getting more top heavy. And our test scores are going down and down and down and down and down. So obviously it's not working. We need to have smaller classroom sizes. We need to have less technology in the classroom. My entire platform, this is why I ran for school board. And this is why I won in an all red district. I beat out a Republican incumbent. And my entire platform was this, and he had 10 times more money than me. So,
yes.
And we did it the smart way. I mean, we did it the nerd way. Like they did it the old way. They had their signs. I had my signs too, to be fair, but he had a lot more signs than me. And I said, okay, I'm going to send out mailers to Republicans that their design just looks a little redder, but at the end of the day, the message is the same, but the background, it looked red. So I sent it to Republicans, and then, and
Good job.
and then I sent the other one. It's the same message. I sent, and I had it look blue, and I sent it to Democrats, and I sent it out, and I sent out text message blasts, and I sent out email blasts. I got everybody's information, and I won. I beat him, and everyone was like, and they told me, there's no way you can win. Like, who are you? And I said, watch. So
I love that.
So I was like, all right, I'm sitting on a board with four Republicans. Well, how do we do this? And so, like, my first thing was, I'm gonna not piss them off, because the moment that they see me as the enemy, then they're not gonna try to work with me.
Right.
So I knew when to pick my battles and when not to pick my battles. If they said something that I disagreed with, I know I'm not gonna win a 4-1. So I'm just gonna say no. I'm not gonna have my opinion about it. I'm just gonna say
Oh man.
I'm just gonna say no. That's I'm gonna vote against that, but I'm not gonna say anything against you to make you mad. And then when it came down to things that I did want to implement, things that were for the kids, they were like, okay, he's not that bad. He's not trying to fight us. Yeah. And so they actually elected me to be school board president. And that was crazy. And then I was like, look, guys, we don't have any money at this school. We are actually declining. We need more resources for our students. How do we do this? We need a bond. And they hadn't approved a bond in like 17 years or something crazy like that. And so I needed to do it smart. So I decided, let's get the community involved. Let's do a survey. We got a survey. And then the community said, yes, we would approve a bond. So I got community members to say we need this. And then they came out, and I got Republicans to approve a higher, a little, it's not that much. It's like, I think it was like 30 cents
Yeah.
per something. I forgot for household or per month or something like that. But it ended up being like tens of millions of dollars for our students. Yeah. And then we have an early college high school now. Oh. So the thing that's really, really cool is that some students are doing great, right? And they really want to learn, but we're putting them all in the same box, and we're teaching them all exactly the same thing. We're making them all learn. And sometimes, I mean, you as a teacher, sometimes if you have 40 students in one class, and I know I'm like concentrating a lot on this, but if you have 40 students in one class and Jimmy is doing something disruptive, you have to correct that first before you can start teaching. And sometimes, the other students are bored. Yeah. So I was like, look, how do we fix this problem? So my plan is, we have this early college school. If you're accelerating through school, you're doing great, then great, accelerate you through school. Our students are now graduating with AA degrees, IGETs, which is halfway through college. So they're saving themselves like $100,000 on college.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then the other ones.
Gosh. Sure, you want to come to Texas?
Yeah.
Just come to Texas.
Come to Texas.
We need help.
I just want to say too, I'm so happy to see you again, Abel. I had such a fun time the last time we talked. I knew you and I were going to get along because I also have a whiteboard behind me. You can't see it. Just sort of like, once you showed up with the whiteboard, I'm like, this guy and I, we're in sync. And
this is how you get stuff done.
Oh, and my household, we're a Spanish. My wife is from Peru. I don't know if you remember that or I said that. We're a Spanish-speaking household here.
Yeah, something else you said Abel, and I was like, you said
Abel, right. Sí, mi esposa es peruana. Yo soy medio peruano. And I just want to say too, like this idea of profit, it seems like so often I come against that, where whether it's school districts, where you got to make choices that make money, like profit justifies things. It also comes into effect with these races, where the Democrats too often are like, oh, this guy's a good fundraiser. You said it before. Yeah, he just wrote himself a check for $1 million. He didn't fundraise. And so it's like, we need to change our focus to have it be people first and not money first. And so what are your thoughts on that, both as it applies to the race you're in now?
No, that's I'm gonna get right into that. I'm about to finish her question really quick.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt something.
No, you're totally good, but I'm about to get into that. So to answer your question about, I think it's about the technology. If you're sitting in front of a screen, they say that you're learning, you're not learning as easily. So students are not learning anymore because their brain matter is not absorbing. They have more gray matter now in their brains, or than they used to, and and this new generation is actually more likely to get Alzheimer's, which is super sad. So yes, taking technology out, and then that's the next part. This is the next part. My plan is to create a trades building in every single high school in our community, so that we can teach them how to do plumbing, how to do electrician and stuff, how to be barbers, how to be chefs, all of the trades, anything that you want to learn. We got to bring that back, because AI is taking our jobs, technology is taking our jobs, and we're not going to have these white collar jobs anymore. Honestly, like this, everything is becoming automated. So we need to be able to teach students how to use their hands again, and that's going to bring their brains back. And so that's how I wanted to answer your question. But about the money thing, Walter, this is the thing. Everyone always cares about money. They're like, literally, we went in our campaign and we're like, we're going to talk to people. We're going to talk to constituents. We're going to go out on the streets. We're going to go to swap meets. We're going to go to grocery stores. We're going to go to knock the doors. We're going to knock the doors. And everyone's like, oh, you can't win because this guy has $1 million. And I'm like, wait, I thought it wasn't about that. Like, I thought it was about the people. And they're like, yeah, but he can win. And I'm like, is it about winning? Are you really winning if you're picking somebody that's doing exactly the same as what we've always had, and we ended up losing to Donald Trump? Is that a win?
Yes.
I don't feel like that's a win.
Yep.
I feel like we've got ourselves into this mess by saying, but they can win. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. And we always say in 2020, we gave them all the power. We gave this group of Democrats all the power to stop this, and they failed. And because they keep giving us these quote unquote safe candidates or quote unquote electable candidates. But if they won't fight for us, how is that safe? And what's the point of getting them elected if they're going to vote for the Republicans? So it doesn't make sense.
Is we're going more and more and more right. It's like all the corporate Democrats are just old Republicans. They're just they're just Republicans from 2008. So I'm like, wait, we're not doing anything different. You're not winning. I'm sorry, but we're trying to actually change things. We're trying to actually make things better. So we're not going to take money from AIPAC. And maybe that's why we have less money, because we don't take money from AIPAC. I'm sorry. I don't take money from any like foreign lobbies or corporations, because I'm not going to be influenced by their vote. Maybe that's why I have less money than you, but I actually have a pretty decent amount of money. We're about to hit like 480,000. That's pretty good.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And and we didn't do it being evil. We did it being normal. We did it being regular people. And I'm proud of that. I'm super proud of that. Some of the people that are running against me, literally, one of the people running against me, he just got a check cut, from his girlfriend's grandpa for $1 million. And he's just, here you go. Here's $1 million, for your super PAC. And these are the same people that are saying we need to end Citizens United. And I'm like, wait. You just said we need to end Citizens United, yet you're using it against us in this race.
Yeah.
I mean, you're using this court ruling like talk the talk, walk the walk. I sold all my stocks. I sold everything. And I said, I'm not going to trade any stocks because it's immoral.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do this job, I want to do it for the people. We're not selling. We're not going to have stocks. We're not going to get money from corporations. We're not going to get money from any foreign lobbies, including AIPAC. So that's how you have to do it. Because if you're going to elect people that are choosing to do those things, then you're not really winning at all.
Yeah.
Nick, go ahead. Did you have a question?
I wanted to, first off, building on some of this is I've been looking at your website throughout while you're talking. And one of the things I want to say is is really awesome to see in your policies section when you actually click on the policies that they're in dual language of English and Spanish. And I understand that that's probably really important in your district, because that area of California has a very large Spanish speaking population. I'm familiar enough with California to know where you're at, and I stayed in San Diego area for about 2 months, so I'm roughly familiar with that area. What is the? I know we're going to shift a little bit of direction here, because I want to. You've been talking about some really awesome stuff. Education is super important to me because I'm a parent of 2 kids, and my kids are in Arkansas. We're in Arkansas, and we have not the best schools, and we want to have better education. And I know they're dismantling the education department, and that may end up being part of my question too. Is I'll ask this question and then I'll go into the next question, which is going to be about policing and ICE and the brutality or what's going on in your area and what you would do to prevent it when you get into office to help support your community and ensure that your community is not being taken or beaten or over policed or targeted in any way just because they're a different color, just because of racial profiling and all of that. So 2 questions for you. How are you planning with your education policies that you have? What is your biggest goal or what do you see you could do best in Congress that you could do that you say could take from your time as city or as school board member? What can you bring to Congress to better the education system for America and prevent, say, the white nationalism that's being baked into it through contracts of Turning Point USA, Heritage Foundation, groups like that?
Yeah. So I think that basically, I feel like, so this is my little tidbit. What I've learned is that a lot of school board members haven't graduated from high school. And I think that if you're in school board, you should probably have graduated at least from high school. You should know a little bit about school if you're going to run it.
Yeah.
But so, I think there should be like a cap where, you should have some level of education for you to be able to run an educational system. So I think it should be like, all right, you have to have at least a bachelor's degree. It's important. But secondly, this is going back to your question about what we would do. So building the trades building is super important. Capping the classroom size, 24, I would say is the max. And I honestly, I wish it was, less. I wish it was 15. If it was 15, that would be great. Making sure that our students are working with their hands more. If you've been in education, it should be about project-based learning. Students learn in projects. They learn with projects. So this hey, I stand in front of the whiteboard. I mean, I use the whiteboard for myself, but I stand in front of the whiteboard and I sit there and I preach. That's, especially with this generation of students that sits on their phones all day, that's not going to work. This phone is significant. This is my wife. This phone is significantly more attractive than whatever the teacher's saying, no matter how interesting the teacher is. So making sure that we're doing things with our hands is really, 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 really important. But I feel like you asked something else, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed that correctly.
My next question is going to be, well, we'll do that one later probably, is the ICE question, because that's going to be an important one. But digging into this education pieces, so I'm in Arkansas, and we would be considered a taker state if we want to use the maker and takers or producers and takers. And we consume more than we produce in our state. We require federal funds for our schools. How would you change the current funding system? Because right now, a lot of education systems are based on property taxes, which is very racist into itself and very white supremacist adjacent, if not white supremacist policy itself, and eugenics-based policies to ensure that rich white people have better education than anybody else. How would you change that system? And that may not be your view on what is currently our education system. That's my view, and I'll ask you, what is your view on that, and how would you change it to ensure that it is more equitable, not just equal but equitable for all students, no matter who they are, across the country, so that we have a better educated population in all 50 states and territories?
That's a great question. So I'm going to go to I'm going to use the analogy of sports. If you've ever seen baseball, you know who the best teams are. And I mean, who are the best teams?
Red Sox.
The Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, right?
The Dodgers, yeah.
Why is that? Because
Most
they
money.
have a system. Yeah, their system is designed so that you can have uncapped spending. And so the more rich teams always win, and it always happens because they can spend more money on better players. And that's what always happens. So, and then you go to a place like the NFL. This is kind of crazy. So it's like
Yeah.
the
Collective
MLB.
bargain.
Yeah, the MLB is kind of like a capitalist, market. And then you kind of actually look at the NFL. I don't even like football that much. That might lose me some votes, but I'll watch football, but I just don't follow it. So like I watch the Super Bowl pretty much. But you look at the NFL, and the NFL, everybody loves football. And why is that? Because every team has a chance to win every year. Every year there's like, hey, my team's good this year. Oh, my team's bad this year. Oh, my team's good this year. My team's bad this year. Hey, this team won, random team. And it's always a random team from a different place. And that's because the NFL shares the wealth. All the teams get a certain, if this team's doing a little better, they're going to share the wealth with a team that's doing a little worse. And that it keeps it a more even playing field. And that's why everybody loves football, because your team is doing good. Everyone's team gets a chance. Right. And so my idea for this is to say, okay, your school population is, let's say 1,000, right? If your school population is 1,000, you're going to get X amount of money, right? It's not based on your property taxes. Your property taxes will be a part of it, but the federal government will cover the difference. And if the population for a rich school is 1,000, then that money, the property tax that goes from that district, will actually go to an impoverished district so that they can get the same opportunity. Because it only makes sense that everyone gets the same education. You shouldn't get a worse education just because you're poor. And if there's a rich neighborhood that's getting a lot more money and they have a lot more property taxes, then I know that there's a school in Santa Barbara, and this is insane. They were showing off as a high school in Santa Barbara, and they were like, oh my gosh, check it out. Look at our 7th gym. This is our second Olympic size swimming pool. And I'm like, they're like, this is our tennis court, and there's our other tennis court, and this is our other tennis court, and this is our other tennis court. And I'm like, whoa. How? And they're like, this is like the most amazing school. I'm like, it looks like better than my college. I love my college, by the way. But I was like, this is like the most. By the way, that was my dream school. I loved UCR. Don't want to say anything, but it was more like it was more like spectacular. They had everything. They had everything in this high school, and I'm like, that's not what education should be about. It's like you're trying to teach our students. If you have a lot of money, great, good for you. You need to help. You need to help those students who don't have it. So that's how you make it equitable. And it should never be about whether or not the students are getting in the seat, because it sounds good in theory, but really what they do, eventually they're just trying to get them in the seat, and they'll pass everybody. They'll pass everybody, even if they don't know how to read. Yeah. So I was getting students that were reading at like a 2nd grade level in 11th grade. And I'm like, I had to sound out everything.
And seeing that here in Texas too, that they're just kind of pushing kids through the system and to the next grade, and they're not ready.
They're not ready. And you have, it sounds cruel, but you have to be ready to get to the next level, and you have to learn. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
And I want to answer a piece of feedback we got in our chat, which is really great. Is education is not directly related to spending. I want to push back on that. I think education is directly related to spending, because when we see spending cut
Yeah.
and children lose access to the tools and they have to go further to get to school, or they just don't have schools, or they then get shifted to homeschooling. If these schools had funding and it was required that you go to a public education institute, not a private religious institute or something along those lines, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Abel, because that might be a controversial idea, is that all children should be required to go to public education of some sort and get a public education that in maybe they go to a religious school, but that requires crossover into a public education institute for part of it, or homeschooling. They need to be required more as part of the education system, and they need to be much more strict on what it counts as a homeschooling curriculum or not. Is what are your thoughts on that type of requirement for children? Because I know we have truancy requirements and kids have to go to schools, but so much money is being funneled away from public education into privatized education, and I fear our truancy rates are just going to go through the roof with what we're currently doing. How are you going to help prevent those types of things when you get into Congress with an equitable solution? How do you work with what you've got right now to either remove it? Do you believe that it's worth, because I know you're not part of the Courage for Democracy network, or I didn't find you on there, but I would, depending on your answer from this question, you may be able to be a part of that network pretty easily. Is would you impeach members of the cabinet, the entire administration itself, to undo the damage that they have done to our education system and ensure that policies can pass for promoting positive education requirements?
Yes. 100% yes. And by the way, I like, this is, I don't want to say anything controversial here. Like when I do something, I want to make sure that it's effective. I'm not going to just do it just to mess around, right? Like if we're going to impeach him and in his cabinet, I'm not sitting there just saying, "Oh, we impeached," like on our side we impeached him. Like, no, I want to make sure that the Senate does it too, because what's the point? What's the point of impeaching him if we're not going to get the job done and get him out? Like that's the point, right? That the point of it is to finish him off and get him gone, and to get his entire cabinet gone. So we have to take the Senate and the House back, and we will impeach and actually get him out of there. That's the point. Otherwise, we're just playing, and it's all for show. And I hate doing things for show. I need to do it right. So yes, that's the main thing. Yes, 100% we do impeach. And second of all, when we put money into education, wait, that was a 2-pronged question, and can you repeat the
second part, the education part? Is
education part? Yeah.
How will you ensure that the funding is actually provided to the schools and it is not wasted on administrative BS is more the question? Because I think part of the problem most people see nowadays is there's a lot of money being thrown at schools, but so much of it goes to consultants or other people to design the system and never actually implement changes that seem to work.
Yes.
How would you change that structure to better fund our schools?
So first, there's different pots of money when you get allocated money. So the district will get a pot from the state, a pot from the local, a pot from the federal. They'll get a grant from here, a grant from there, and then it turns into your slush fund. It turns into your general fund, and then you have certain. But the important thing is, when we allocate money from the federal government, we get to decide what that money goes to. We can tell them, here, you just have it. You can do that, which is what they've done, but you can also allocate it to specific things. You can say, this money right here is allocated to a building. This money right here is allocated to more teachers. This money right here cannot go to more administration. That's how you do it. So you can actually choose what the money goes to. And this is something that people don't realize. Yes, I don't want to waste money either. That's the last thing I want to do. Like, if we're gonna spend taxpayer dollars, we have to know, taxation with representation. We have to know what that money is going to go to. But also, to answer your other question about like whether or not we should have private schools or whether or not we should all be publicly funded. This is a two-pronged approach, right? It's like some people do want to teach their kids about religion. Obviously, we have church and state, separation of church and state. But what you need to do is allocate federal funds and to say this money is for federal standards. So you need to teach federal standards at this school.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you're going to teach students, and whether or not you're a religious institute or not, you have to teach them the standards.
Absolutely.
You have to teach these standards, and you also, and I feel like the standards right now are too. There's too many of them, and they're all about science, English, math, and history. That's it. There's nothing else.
What are your thoughts on standardized testing? Because I know that's huge here in Texas. They love their standardized tests. And I think we can be done with them. I don't really see a purpose for them anymore because they're not really measuring anything. And then the things that they do measure, the test scores are just dropping year after year after year. So how can we get away from standardized testing here in America because I want to pick your brain. I know right now my mind is going a million different directions, but education is something here in Texas where I'm so fed up with it, especially with this new Bluebonnet program that they're rolling out that has religious indoctrination in it, schooling. I'm just curious, what are the things that we can do to kind of get some kind of balance back? Because I feel like we've swung so far right, and there are people like me that live here that are just not with it, but our voices aren't being heard. I mean, I go to school board meetings. I've spoke at school board meetings, and it's like my voice just goes out the door.
Yeah.
Just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. That's another thing. But I don't know if you guys know this, but like school board members are not allowed to speak to the audience. So it's like the weirdest thing. So like people will come up to a school board member, speak for their 3 minutes, and then they walk away, and you're not allowed to say anything. And I've seen it happen before where like people will walk up and just say, I don't even want to say the vile things that I've heard them say to other school board members, but you're not allowed to respond. And so you just have to be like, but this is really important. I think there should be a community vote, a community where if someone in the community says something, then and it's a good idea, then it should be able to be brought up for a vote. And you're able to do that, but it's like there should be a process. There should be a process that a community member can say, hey, look, this is my idea. I want this idea to happen. And therefore, what do I need to do? Maybe I need to get 30. Maybe I need to get 40. Maybe I need to get 50 signatures from this community, whatever it is, right? But I want this idea to happen. Yeah. And because of that, I want, what do I need to do to actually make that happen? Rather than me just going up here speaking for 3 minutes and doing a vacuous statement that's going to be thrown away. Yeah. So that's that step. And as far as the standardized testing, I'm torn about that, honestly, because on one end, you want to measure success, right? You want to measure how well, people are doing. And then on the other end, it's like, it's not working. So it's like, what do you do? You want to know that like the money that we're using or the teachers that we are hiring are doing their jobs, because you don't want to throw away this, you don't want to throw this away. But at the end of the day, like if the test scores keep going down, we do need to change the system. Like the system isn't designed right. So how do we do that? I think I think the main thing is it should be based on the level of success from the teacher. So like, I think the teacher like should look at the standards, and this should be like this should be a practice that happens every year. The teachers should look at the standards. Like, let's say it's math, the math department. The math department looks at the standards and says, this is what we need to teach. And so they create this test, and they say, obviously math doesn't change that much. I mean, sometimes math does change, but but they'll say, this is what we need to teach. This is our standardized test that we created, that we want to teach. And then and then we actually, I've done that in my school district. So this is kind of like a cheat codes. But that's how we got our test scores higher than anyone in Riverside County.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I read that about you. That's how I was like, okay, how?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can I'd like to just go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I wanted to say, I would like to reframe. I think we have an issue in this country because we talk about, well, parents want to teach the kids this, but we rarely say what is in the best interest of the kids. And I think there's an issue in our country where we don't even see kids as human. We see them as property of the parents. And I think if we start reframing things that way, like just recognizing children are people, because the reality is a lot of the abuse kids endure, it's from the home, and they come to school as a place where we have to identify abusive households. I had a talk with Sherry Dunn recently about how we're in this society of like the husband's privilege, where he wields ownership over his wife, and he wields ownership over and that's like what gave birth to our entire legal system in the United States. We have to do some pretty extreme looking back at all these rules that we hold to be, just traditional, and change that and recognize the personhood of women, the personhood of children. And then once we do that, it kind of becomes a natural thing that we will reform a lot of different parts of our society, including education. So what are your thoughts there?
So basically I always go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like if your students if your students are worried about their food, they're worried about their housing, they have, abusive parents, or their parents are fighting with each other, then they're not really worried about whatever you're teaching them. It's just, they don't care that much. It's like, imagine you this is a horrible example, but imagine if you wanted to go to school the night before your dad, abused your mom in front of you. And now you have to walk to school, or even if you didn't have to walk to school, now your dad takes you to school and you're in this car, it's awkward. And, you got an argument with him, and he, yells at you, and you tell him something about why would this happen? Why would you do that to mom? Blah, blah, blah. And then now you're out the car. Now, first period. All right, guys, be active, be ready to teach, learn. So this is super important. We actually hired a school psychologist instead of a school resource officer. And by the way, they ended up getting the school resource officer. So I didn't want the school resource officer because, like, we have an early college high school, and all our students are like academically doing really well. There's literally no fights, nothing wrong in our schools. Like, and they're like, nope, we need to spend $200 and something thousand on a police officer to be here. I'm like, make it make sense. Like, but anyway, that's another subject. What we ended up doing was we hired a school psychologist, and we had this school psychologist will actually take people, and then they have like tiers. So they'll say, okay, everyone is tier 1 at least, and then tier 2, more needs, and then it goes all the way to tier 4. A tier 4 is someone that really, really, really needs help. They just had a very traumatic incident, and this has helped so many of our students get out of the mindset of that's how you really stop school shootings.
Yes.
That's really how you stop school shootings. I mean, that's how you're going to save real actual lives. You talk to the students that are trying, that are in their heads, that are worried, and that are trying to escape their reality, and you tell them what's wrong, what happened, how do we fix this? 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 And then when they start talking, they'll tell you, and we've solved so many crises that have happened just because of that. So that's how you.
And that falls into that. We have all these things in the United States where just there's this code of silence about the root cause of so many of our problems. We just don't even talk about it. And so I just congratulate you. We could go on and on. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're running out of
But-
time. And Walter, that was such a great question
Oh,
and got to such a
fantastic.
great point, because what you said there, Abba, was
Beautiful.
that
It was beautiful.
children need to be treated like people,
Yes.
and adults want support and help when
Yeah.
we have crises and when we have needs, just like children need them. And my mom was a school psychologist. Like, I grew up understanding the importance of that role and the need that schools are safe for children to go to, and being safe means you have people who you can talk to and discuss and unpack your issues, and that is education in itself. And I think we need to start treating that as an equal part of the education. Is the psychological needs and our well-being and how we support our children. I'm an advocate that we should have taxpayer funded, not free. I won't say free because that's not what they are, is taxpayer funded meals available at schools for children all year, not just during the school year, but all year, at least 2 meals a day for every child in your district, because it should be paid for through our taxes. We should have access to food, and
Kids shouldn't be hungry. I mean, that's
kids shouldn't be
basic.
hungry.
How
And
are
I
you
think
going to
that would,
require
and
kids?
I think that,
Yeah, to go to school and then not feed them. Like,
Yeah.
how are they going to feed themselves? Like, it's our
Especially
job.
when they're
to
throwing,
feed them.
sometimes they're
It's
throwing
okay.
food away. They're
Yeah.
throwing fruit away in front of them sometimes.
mhm.
Yeah.
So, Abba, we're hitting right at the top of the hour, and I'm going to do what I did for Chris for you too, which is I'm going to fill you on the screen and give you the opportunity to platform yourself and the work and the campaign that you're running and what you're running for. This has been such a great conversation. I really want to have you back again
Yeah.
for some other
I
discussions
love
too.
Abel.
I think you'd fit really well into the intelligent masculinity series and a discussion on what it means to be someone who's intelligently masculine and sucks less than most of the other people around us. We have a phrase here that's just suck less. My wife and I say it to each other about like people who are awful, is they just really need to suck less. And so I'd really love to have you on for one of those upcoming discussions. So I'll reach out to you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But I'd love
know
to give.
we only talked about education, so
That's a big one.
I think that's
a big
such.
one.
I think that's so great. We need to have these conversations. Like, we could have you back for another 4 hours to discuss 4 different issues, like
Let's
an
make it
hour
clips.
each. Like, I would love to do that with candidates. And you have the opportunity, like all the others. This is for you too. Like, take this, use this material, what you talked about. I want you guys to have these platforms, and I want you to have this space. So, Abel, I'm going to give you a moment here to for yourself, and then once you platform yourself, we'll get into the other 3 of us, so everybody has a chance to promote their platforms too. But this is about you here. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for talking with us and connecting with us. This has been amazing.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. So take it away. I'll put up a QR code right next to your face, so that everybody can go find you and support your work.
Yes. Thank you so much. So I will give you my elevator pitch. So my name is Abel Chavez. I am running in California's 48th district. It was against Daryl Issa. He was there for 26 years, and now he's dropped out because of Prop 50. Really proud of that. Prop 50 did a great job. I am a teacher. I studied at UCR to become a teacher. I'm raising my family here, my 3 young boys, and it's really important to me that they have a future, and all of our children, all of our families here, all of the people that work and struggle in this community have a future. I I beat out a Republican incumbent when I ran for school board. They had 10 times more money than me. Then they elected me to be school board president. And then we secured tens of millions of dollars in funding for our students. And then from there, I actually help business owners retire as well. So that's really important to me to help the small business community stay strong in our community. My platform is about Medicare for all. My platform is about childcare for working families. My platform is about getting ICE out of our streets, hiring more judges, creating a humane immigration system where we can actually help bring our economy up with the help of immigrants. My platform is about not taking money from corporations, not taking money from foreign lobbies like AIPAC. My platform is about ending corruption. If you believe in that kind of stuff, if you believe that we can actually have a better tomorrow, I would be honored to serve you. I would be honored to earn your support. Get the platform, get the word out. Go on ablechavezforcongress.com. Follow me on Able Chavez for Congress on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, X, all of the platforms. ablechavezforcongress.com. I would be honored to be a representative for the whole country.
We've got, well, I muted all of us in the background. We've got Walter celebrating as always. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us and for coming on today. And I hope we've made some good connections with you and for you, and that we can help pass along to you, because we need a coalition before we get into office. That's how our system works. And we need strong candidates who are ready to step in and do the work. And it sounds like you are. So thank you for coming on and speaking with us and talking about education. That was so important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Evie,
Nice to meet you,
I want to give it to you and to promote yourself and what you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Evie, and being a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Do you have anything you want to promote for yourself, Evie? I'll give you a second to shamelessly promote what you're doing.
I'm just here, I guess. I'm here to help. I'm here to be on the right side of history. I am currently writing a book. My memoir is in editing right now. I've got a novel that I've just completed. So one of these days I will present it to the world. But for now, I am headfirst into politics. I talk about, feminist cultural criticisms, religion, politics, fuck the patriarchy. And if y'all would have just listened to Black women, that's kind of my whole thing. So that's where I'm at. But the more conversations that we can have of this, I'm here for it.
What's the name of your Substack again? What's the title of it?
I go by Evie Bateman.
Okay, perfect.
And that QR code right up on the screen, that'll bring you to Evie's platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Evie, thank you for joining with us and being a community member who
for the invite.
wanted. Great. Yeah. We're going to have you back again. I want to have just a discussion with you too and do our normal notes of the week with you. That'll be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Walter, promote yourself, my friend.
Oh, I'm so happy about this. It's so great to see Abel again. I just really appreciate this. The second time we've talked, the first time your child interrupted us and people said, it's like, that was the realest part of the whole interview, because you came in and you were holding the baby. And it's just like, yes, this is a person who understands that we have to juggle all these things. It's like, and so many of our representatives, they're just sitting in their mansions and they're sipping their lattes and everything is so easy for them. And it's like, because they steal all the taxpayer money for themselves. So it's just like, I love that you're a person, and it's like the school board. Thank you for being on school board. I keep telling everybody what you said. The right, they deliberately sabotage everything. They sabotage our ability of our kids to get an education. They fund unqualified people and put them on school board. They put them on every office all the way up to the president of the United States. Unqualified people. That's what the right does. And things like we were worried about, our kids, their cognitive ability is in decline because of social media. It's not an accident. I think they're doing this on purpose. They constantly erode education. They try to erode our voting rights. They want to dismantle the post office to take away our voting rights. So just everything they do, it lines up to that. Our part here is messaging. We're going to need your help when you're in Congress, because as you try to implement things, they're going to come at you because they got all the money in journalism too. And it's people like us that have to defend your good ideas. We need help there. And all these things are connected. But it just fills my heart with joy to know you exist in the world, and everything you say is so great. And just the compassion and the integrity I see just radiating it out of you. And again, just thank you for being of that new generation of politician that comes and talks to regular people, because the government is our government. And if you're knocking on doors, you're going to beat any amount of money, because they can't buy any elections anymore, because we're fed up with this. You knock on the doors, you show your integrity, you show up to do the work. Abel's doing it. So it just makes me happy. So again, thank you for being here. We're going to win.
Hell yeah. Every time you speak, well, I get so fired up when we're done these shows. Thank you so much, Walter. Like, I get so fired up. And finally, come join me here, Sick of the Shit Publications, because we are trying to have these conversations with candidates and dig into education and the important topics that actually matter to all of us. Like, you should care about education, whether you have kids or not. You should care about, is the populace educated, and is it educated in an equitable way so that everybody rises, because rising tide lifts all boats. And we are those boats that need to be lifted right now. And it's so wonderful to get candidates like you, Abel, and with Chris Earl before you, to get candidates running who are sick of the shit that's going on and who are doing something about that shit. And thank you for doing it. Thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for caring, because the policies that you're advocating for will benefit my kids.
Yes.
They will benefit others' kids too, which is equally as important. And I know that they would benefit my kids. And if I could vote for you, I would. Like, I can't vote for you because you're not in my district.
I'm gonna go
you're
like
in
this.
California, but I will happily advocate for you, and I would love to have you back on for more discussions, because it's fantastic. And this is what we're trying to do, because your ideas, we need ideas, and we need a plan, and we need people who are willing to do those things and put them forward. And Abel, you seem like someone who's going to do that, seeing as you've done it in your own district already for kids. And someone who helps kids and does good for kids is probably a good person. Like,
I hope so. I try.
Like, I want just good, normal people. And it's so important that you all continue to subscribe and help build this platform so that we can amplify more the voices that are needed right now. And I would love to continue building this relationship so that we can keep talking as your candidacy goes forward. And hopefully as we see you in Congress and get your message out, because these types of things are super important, and getting this message out to everybody and your district specifically, which I think Shane is nearby his district. We got to get you in touch with Shane Urich, who's one of my colleagues and contributors or friends on a show called Palin Talk, where we talk tech, no fascism, with a comma in there, tech, comma, no fascism, play on words. But I think you'd be a great discussion in there around tech and education and how that impacts, and what policies could be advocated for and platformed and actually implemented into law so that we could better educate our children. So that was long-winded to say thanks everyone for being here. You guys are awesome. To everyone in the audience, smash the heart one last time. Hit the subscribe button if you're on Substack in that top left corner so that you subscribe to all of the folks who are here. I'll make sure if anybody is missing that they're added at the end so everybody can have access to the video. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's go have a great day. We're all done being this sick of this shit. We're all done being sick of the shit, so we're now doing the shit. Thanks, y'all. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much.